scroll, Ben Kingsley Adir, there's meant to be this clever Easter egg in the background you probably noticed. It says, "The faces of freedom," as all the other scrolls' faces change to his face. And I think the thing these evil scrolls want, because Talos is saying we have to be really careful here, and Nick Fury says that he's the only person that stands between them and what they want, it's probably just meant to be the Earth. There's all the jokes between the Marvel movies with the Earth-ending catastrophes that they have in every single movie, like, here we go again, another Earth-ending catastrophe. Is it going to be another Celestial trying to burst out of the planet? Is it going to be somebody trying to take over the planet? Is it another Thanos coming along trying to steal something from Earth? The canonical reason in the MCU why the Earth is such a locus of trouble, why people want Earth so badly, is because it's a nexus point of a bunch of magical ley lines, a bunch of power flowing through it. It's also the planet that Kang was born on, so it has to survive. It has to be important for him to become who he's supposed to be in every reality. It's just because of the multiverse aspect of Kang's character in general. When you're talking about his locus of power being on Earth, it's not just the 616 Earth, it's like every single version of Earth that's out there. And when you're talking about the Skrulls, like in a larger political sense in the galaxy, it's a very strategic position in the galaxy. And a lot of what's happening here probably ties in with the Kree-Skrull War that's been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. That's kind of what happened in the comics, is that the Kree and the Skrulls both separately wanted the Earth because it was a very strategic position in the war between their cultures. But the difference in this series is that you have two different factions of Skrulls. Like, you have the good Skrulls that Nick Fury has been working with this whole time, and you have an evil, religious zealot group of Skrulls that want to take over their culture and take their race in a way more hardcore direction. You can let me know in the comments what you think this special thing is in the case. It's a very Pulp Fiction 7 type of reference, like what's in the box, like what's that gold shining light coming out, and you have Nick Fury because Sam Jackson was also in Pulp Fiction. This particular scene with them opening up this mystery box with something inside might be a misdirect, but I think in the grander sense, they just want to take over Earth in general and replace all of Earth's leaders with Skrulls. This room here that Emilia Clarke's character walks into seems like it's in Russia just based on the language. Somebody can correct me in the comics if that's not totally accurate, but I believe what's happening here is that the evil Skrulls are building something that will help them take over the planet. You also have to remember that Nick Fury's character has had the space station in orbit. They've been cloaked this whole time, which is why you haven't seen a whole lot of them outside of post-credit scenes and little winks and Easter eggs. And I believe during this series, they'll explain why Nick Fury has been so off the radar this whole time, why he didn't get involved, why he didn't try to help Spider-Man out during the events of Spider-Man No Way Home, leading to the whole Doctor Strange plot, them messing the spell up. And it'll have something to do with this big Skrull takeover that's been going on in the background. But hopefully that'll explain the political thriller element of this series, as opposed to comic book Secret Invasion, which was more like a big action-adventure series with the entire MCU roster. I believe these episodes are supposed to be released before Loki Season 2 sometime in the spring, so we'll probably get some sort of footage or trailer either before the end of the year or early next year. Everyone post all your reactions in the comments below and let me know what your theories are about Emilia Clarke's character, these evil Skrulls, and what Nick Fury has been doing this whole time. One of the other biggest surprises during this big Marvel Disney Plus presentation was them actually doing a Daredevil Born Again panel where they talked a little bit about the series, with Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin making a bunch of jokes with Charlie Cox about how it was his series, even though Daredevil is in the title of the series.
Aren't you supposed to talk about my show? Wait, your show? I think you mean my show.
Like your show? Are you talking about my show? They haven't started filming it yet, so obviously they didn't have footage to show off for it, but they did remind everyone the Kingpin will show up in the Echo series and he'll have a bandage over his eye that she shot, which is right out of the comics. Daredevil is getting ready to cameo in the She-Hulk episodes real soon, so I'll talk more about Daredevil Born Again when he comes around for that.
I think you're in a unique position to do some real good. Jen Walters can use the law to help people when society fails them. She-Hulk can help people when the law fails them.
This guy's really kind of doing it for me.
Marvel also released a bunch more information about Thunderbolts, Captain America 4. They released a new trailer for Werewolf by Night, which is starting in October. It's going to be like a one-off special. I'll do videos for all that stuff as quickly as possible, so be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss that. Everyone click here for my brand new Mandalorian Season 3 trailer video, and click here for all my other Marvel trailer videos. I'll update the link as soon as I post those. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
I need to make an example of Donnie Blaze.
No judge is going to take this seriously unless we do things by the book.
Book of Ashanti.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This is going to be my full She-Hulk episode 4 video. There were a whole bunch of Marvel Easter eggs, so we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes. I'm doing videos for all the episodes, just like I do for the other Marvel Disney Plus series. Marvel Disney Plus Day is also happening this weekend. There's supposed to be a bunch of big trailers, a bunch of big announcements. Of course, I'll be doing videos for all that stuff as well, too. Careful for spoilers for the episode. If you haven't seen it yet, we'll start at the beginning and work our way through shot by shot, talking about Easter eggs and WTF moments as we go along. Starting with the episode title, the episode was called Is This Not Real Magic?, which is a reference to Wong suing the magician pretending to be a full-blown sorcerer. Turns out there was a student at Kamartaj, but was just a total dirtbag, and they kicked him out after a week, and he stole a sling ring and has just been causing trouble at his magic venue ever since. Using the most Ghost Rider name he could possibly think of, the showrunner actually explained what was going on with the Ghost Rider name because he's calling himself Donnie Blaze. Obviously, that's meant to be a reference to Johnny Blaze. The fire dimension that he keeps sending people to is supposed to be a reference to Marvel's version of Hell. There are a couple different dimensions in the MCU that you could call Hell, just in general, like they're called the Hell Lords, and there are a couple major characters that you associate with that, like you can make all the Mephisto jokes that you want. Madison keeps talking about a demon that she made a contract with, like she sold her soul to be sent back home. That's what they basically showed during the post-credit scenes, like her signing her soul away. I gave a couple drops of my blood, signed a contract, and it sent me back. I'm not allowed to talk about it. The goat-looking demon is another reference to a version of the devil, like it's a form that the devil takes, but the name tag on it that says Jake in the end credit scene is depicted as if it's drawn by the court artist based on what Madison told them, so it's like his account of what Madison remembered kind of wrong, so the demon's name probably wasn't Jake. I couldn't actually find any demons in Marvel Comics whose names start with a J, so I just assumed that Madison probably got that part wrong because she kind of brushes over a lot of what happened, like, that was his fire dimension, there was a good-looking demon that I sold my soul to, it's all fine. No big deal, he's just gonna steal my soul and the souls of all the people that I love if I tell too many people about this. Because this is Wong, we're dealing with Doctor Strange mythology from the comics. Obviously, they've been setting up a lot of more supernatural stuff just in the MCU in general, heading on the path to introducing characters like Ghost Rider. I believe the actual dimension that she was sent to is the same dimension that you see Doctor Strange and America Chavez traveling through as they go through the multiverse. Like in the background, it looks kind of like this, and it looks a little bit like Mephisto's dimension in the comics too. But that's basically the references that they're going for, like, okay, yeah, we're going for Ghost Rider stuff here. The actual opening scene of the episode starts with a metal cover and the magician, Donnie Blaze, pretending to use magic with a little bit of real magic thrown in there. When he mentions Billy Shakes, that's a reference to William Shakespeare, a rose by any name. And the venue that he's working at is called the Mystical Castle. That's an Easter egg for the real-life Los Angeles area Magic Castle. But they basically explain he got his hands on the sling ring when he was briefly a student at Kamartaj. And they make a bunch of jokes about Wong not forming actual contracts or getting anything in writing with any of the potential students that come along through Kamartaj. Maybe he's going to change that after the events of this episode. Wong is chilling out, getting ready to watch Sopranos episodes on this giant flat-screen TV. Turns out he has a lot of modern amenities. They made a couple of jokes about that during the first Doctor Strange movie, like, oh, here's the Wi-Fi password, like they actually have Wi-Fi, even though it seems super old-timey. In last week's episode, they also revealed his LinkedIn page. He worked at a Target in Kamartaj, so like even though it doesn't seem like it, Kamartaj probably has a bunch of regular businesses that you would see in any other big city. Madison then explains how she gets sent back to this 616 MCU universe by selling her soul to the demon. The other thing here is that this event with Madison seems like it's the straw that broke the camel's back for him, like that's enough. Mostly because he got his episode of The Sopranos spoiled for him and he blames Donnie Blaze for it, and he vows revenge. Then Jennifer Walters breaks the fourth wall, one of many fourth wall breaks in the episode. There are like several of them, way more than previous episodes. Joking about how everybody is super happy because Wong is back, calling it Twitter armor, like Twitter will be nicer to the episode because of all the Ghost Rider and the Wong stuff. Then when they go to her office and they show you like the super long to-do list that she has, she says she's buying purple and green highlighters because they're Hulk colors. She's buying much larger clothes that will fit her in She-Hulk form. That kind of happens through the course of the episode too, where she seems like she's going to be spending more time in She-Hulk form just because all the guys that she's trying to date seem like they're way more into the thick version of Jennifer Walters' She-Hulk than they are to the regular version. Like there's all these things in her life, all these different aspects of her life that are telling her that she'd be better off in She-Hulk form. There's another joke about wasting chopsticks, buying more, and buying way more Cheetos because she's eating way more Flamin' Hot Cheetos on the regular and she eats them with chopsticks. That's a big callback to the first episode, and it's also an Oscar Isaac joke because in real life, just like completely separately, before Oscar Isaac did all the Moon Knight stuff, there was this funny photo of him eating Flamin' Hot Cheetos with chopsticks. But there are actually a lot of people in real life that said that they do that too. Then when they scroll way down the list, there's a whole bunch of names of big comic book creators at Marvel in the form of cases that she's working on. So Kraft v. Sewell is David Anthony Kraft, who worked on a bunch of Incredible Hulk comics for a while, and Charles Sewell, who writes a ton of the Star Wars comics that Marvel publishes. The Lee vs. Byrne is Jim Lee and John Byrne. Jim Lee famously worked on a bunch of Marvel comics before he went to DC and did a lot of his own stuff. And the big John Byrne Easter egg here too is because he actually wrote the sensational She-Hulk comic book, which was the comic where she started breaking the fourth wall, which she does so many times in this episode and the rest of the series just in general. And all that started years before Deadpool started breaking the fourth wall. So maybe someday they'll meet in the MCU and they'll have some jokes about that. In real life, Tatiana Maslany was also making jokes about this too, because she's from Canada in real life, and so is Ryan Reynolds. So because the characters they play are so meta, she was suggesting that they play on that with a scene where they're talking in character about being from Canada, but then they break character and start talking to each other like they're from Canada and just go back and forth. The whole thing with the Jansen class action, I think, is a reference to Klaus Janson, who worked on a ton of Marvel comics, and I think the class action is just a joke about all the Marvel artists getting pissed in real life at Marvel for not actually paying them extra commissions when they adapt the comic stories that they created for the movies in the shows. Like, that is a thing in real life. They set up that MCU version of Tinder called Matcher for all the She-Hulk dating that she does in the series. Like, they do it in this episode, but it'll probably continue through the rest of the series. You can guess what her password might be, but on the next page, there's another QR code that you can scan on this screen to get another free She-Hulk comic book. They did the same thing during Moon Knight, where like in most of the episodes, there's a QR code you can scan to get free comic books. She breaks the fourth wall again to tell us her profile is perfect, but then Nikki rips it apart and they set the whole idea of her creating a dating profile for She-Hulk, which is something that they actually did in real life. Marvel created an actual profile for She-Hulk on the real life Tinder app. You can let me know if you actually used the app and you saw her, like you matched with She-Hulk. Like, oh, I matched with somebody. Wait a minute, it's She-Hulk. Is this a real thing? What? No kink shaming here, because it also seems like in the MCU, people really want the thicker version of Jen, She-Hulk, than they want actual Jennifer Walters. It does seem like this is the horniest Marvel series that we've had so far. Wong then shows up in her office and explains the Donnie Blaze backstory and how he wants to sue her, and they make a whole bunch of references. I already explained his backstory, like how he came to Kamartaj for a brief period, and while he was on the way out, he must have stolen the sling ring, and that's how he's causing all these problems. When he gets into the idea of inexperienced people experimenting in interdimensional travel, that's another reference to all the mistakes and craziness that will be caused during the events of Spider-Man No Way Home and Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. Like, they're going to do something just as bad multiple times very soon. Also, the larger stuff like untangling the material and astral planes is a bigger deal, I think, and probably more of a reference to Avengers 5, Kang Dynasty, and Avengers 6, Secret Wars, with the eventual collapse of the entire multiverse in all reality in the incursions. There are a couple references to that later in the episode too, and I think it's all references to the incursions and stuff that we just saw in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. When they start making the jokes about the contracts that they actually form at Kamartaj, like, we actually abide to a higher law, the time-space continuum, that's another Avengers 5 Kang Dynasty incursions reference. In Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, when Reed Richards talks about him destabilizing the multiverse and leading to more incursions, it's kind of that energy. When he mentions the Book of Vishanti, obviously we saw a version of that during Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. The whole idea with that is that it's kind of like the Darkhold Temple. It's not like the Darkhold book. They said that there's only one Book of Vishanti for the entire multiverse, and the Illuminati characters had just built a back door to the book itself. So when Scarlet Witch basically burns it up there, they burn the only copy of the book. The guy that tries to hit on them is just meant to be like a rando, skeezy, married dude. Like, he's literally listed as married person in the credits. It's just meant to set up all the bad dates that she's about to go on as Jennifer Walters. Not that the dates as She-Hulk are that much better. Like, she has that one good date, but also as She-Hulk, even though she gets way more matches, she still has a bunch of bad dates. They joke about the actual She-Hulk name becoming catchier and catchier, her getting more comfortable with it, but I think that's meant to set up next week's episode with the whole Titania lawsuit. I'll explain what's going on with that in a second too. I couldn't find any Marvel Easter eggs in the Cornelius P. Willow's name, but I already explained how this is meant to be a Magic Castle reference to the place in Los Angeles in real life. They have the joke about not being able to copyright art, which is obviously a lie. Like as she says in the episode, you can totally copyright art. Wong also kind of lies a little bit too when he says the Sorcerer Supreme doesn't engage in competition because we literally last week's episode just saw him fighting the Abomination. When she goes on the first batch of bad dates as Jennifer Walters, the guy says he got banned from Canada. Like I said, it's meant to be an Easter egg to Tatiana Maslany in real life being from actual Canada, like Ryan Reynolds. Then when they have the trial the next day, Donnie Blaze's lawyer looks a little bit like Dan Slott. It's not Dan Slott like it's a completely different person, but it does look a lot like him, and he is a longtime Marvel writer. When Wong asks for mercy from Quan Yi, that's actually an Iron Fist Easter egg. As far as I can tell, one of the first Iron Fist Easter eggs they've legit had in the MCU since they canceled the Iron Fist in the Marvel Netflix series like Daredevil. Obviously, we have the new Daredevil series coming back. Maybe there'll be some Iron Fist Easter eggs now that a lot of those characters are coming back. Like Punisher will also come back eventually too. Jessica Jones, Luke Cage. Pretty much all those Marvel Netflix characters are like slowly being folded back into the MCU in different series and movies. Also, you have the idea that Daredevil will cameo in a couple more episodes. But the character Quan Yi is actually the Taoist god of mercy, which is why he asked her for extra mercy. And a lot of these scenes with Madison are just meant to set up the post-credit scene where she and Wong hang out. Like she talks about how she's best friends with Wong now and he can't stand her. But they actually do go get Froyo right after this. Like, okay, fine, we'll go get Froyo, but no more spoiling The Sopranos for me. When Wong says Donnie Blaze seeks to wield the power of gods, in Marvel Comics, it's a little bit different the way they explain Doctor Strange's magic and a lot of the other big characters. Certain gods do grant them powers, like Doctor Strange and the other magic users. Comic book Doctor Strange gets most of his energy to power his spells by forming a contract with the actual Vishanti gods. They're a trio of cosmic gods, like you talk about all the gods that we saw during Thor Love and Thunder, but they changed that a little bit for the movies. I talked a lot about this during my Doctor Strange 2 Easter egg videos, because a lot of it gets into the Book of the Vishanti and the way they're referencing that. His whole speech about one man causing great harm, ripples so great that they reverberate through the entire multiverse, is also a reference to, you probably guessed it, Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, because during that movie, multiple characters tell versions of that speech to Doctor Strange. It's also kind of a reference to what he does during Spider-Man No Way Home. Wong also references the mirror dimension, saying that he should just throw Donnie Blaze in there, which they pay off in the end credit scene. Like you see him trapping Donnie Blaze in there as if he finally did that after the case was over. I felt like that was actually funnier than the real post-credit scene. Then she creates her dating profile as She-Hulk, breaks the fourth wall again 2 times in a row, goes on more bad dates. One of them is like a super fan of She-Hulk and other superheroes because of her fight with Titania in court, and then makes a bunch of Incredible Hulk references talking about Bruce Banner Hulk. You can think of that as like a multiple level Easter egg, like they're referencing the events of the Incredible Hulk, they're referencing the Incredible Hulk comic books, and it sounds like within the MCU, people actually call Bruce Banner the Incredible Hulk. We did see Thor in Thor Love and Thunder wearing the hat with the Avengers title from the comics on it, so it does sound like a lot of the merchandise that sold for these characters in-universe references a lot of the slogans from the comics. The fanboy starts asking her all kinds of super deep, geeky questions about her powers and whether or not she could withstand vibranium, making more Black Panther references. Like she's gone on a date with a comic book convention, basically. She breaks the fourth wall again, and then eventually Donnie Blaze opens another portal to another dimension, trying to send someone back, and winds up freeing the small demons. I couldn't find any specific references to particular comic book demons, like none of the comic book demons look like these demons, so they might have created these just for the episode. While this is happening, we see Wong watching the This Is Us episodes on his TV, setting up the post-credit scene, because that's what they're watching in the post-credit scene. And She-Hulk is in the middle of getting ready to perform Death by Snoo Snoo with her date as she breaks the fourth wall again, and Wong totally cockblocks them. They have their big team-up moment where they both use their powers to throw all the demons through another portal to what seems like a frozen dimension. Maybe it's Niflheim, maybe it's Jotunheim. She breaks the fourth wall again during their fight. And I think their big team-up moment here is meant to be sort of a precursor for what it's going to look like when she teams up with other Avengers characters in future movies, like a bigger version of what you're seeing happen here. Just in the way that Marvel characters eventually start combining their powers. You also start looking around the background of the Magic venue. There's a Thurston poster That might be a reference to the Thurston Comedy Club that one of Patton Oswalt's characters on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. worked at. They also did versions of Ghost Rider during that series, and they're referencing Ghost Rider during this episode, so you could think of it sort of like a connection with all those different things. When we go back to her date, he's reading a book by Roxane Gay. She's also written some of the more recent Black Panther comics too, like she's another Marvel comic book creator. And we get our Death by Snoo Snoo moment. Everyone pour one out for that dude, taking one for the team. He's gonna enjoy every minute of that.
Computer sentences them to death! By Snoo Snoo!
It would have been a little bit funnier if he had waddled out the next morning, but like they have that funny moment where she comes back as Jennifer Walters making breakfast, and he doesn't want to have anything to do with her, like, oh, wait a minute, you're regular? You know what, I'm gonna take off right now, goodbye. I think just setting up the idea that she's going to want to spend more and more time as She-Hulk just because it seems like everybody, for many different reasons in aspects of her life, like She-Hulk more than they like regular Jennifer Walters. And Titania sues her, claiming that her company owns the She-Hulk name trademark. Titania is a She-Hulk comic book character, like she's been a She-Hulk villain for a long time. So this is just setting up them going to court with each other in episode 5. What probably happened is that she's doing this to get back at Jennifer Walters using the courts to do it. Titania probably just trademarked the name before Jennifer Walters thought to do it, and people do this in real life all the time to try and work some sort of settlement out with them. Like, you gotta pay me a lot of money now. It's just a way to extort money out of people. And she breaks the fourth wall again, talking about how the ending is a downer, but the actual post-credit scene is gonna be way more fun. She did this in last week's episode too, like, we all realize you're watching for the really cool cameo that's going to happen in this episode, but there's actually a lot of other stuff going on too, and it's meant to be my series. Like, she's joking about how people aren't remembering that it's actually her series. During the end credits with all the courtroom art, the new scenes that they added are Madison signing her contract, selling her soul away, apparently in this hell dimension, with the goat demon, who is wearing the Jake name tag, but the whole idea, like I said, is that this is sort of like a courtroom artist depiction of what Madison told him, and it's Madison kind of misremembering things a little bit. This is She-Hulk just cleaning off the demon gunk before she goes back for Death by Snoo Snoo, and then Donnie Blaze stuck in the mirror dimension, paying off Wong's threat. Probably my favorite scene from like all the new post-credit scenes. I wonder how long Wong trapped him in there. And in the actual post-credit scene, Wong and Madison just hang out together watching the This Is Us episode, talking about all the drinks that they've tried, and her getting excited about trying goat's milk that they have left over from the last big wedding they performed at Camartage. Next week's episode will be a big Titania episode. We'll see which other big cameos and references that they make and other abomination stuff that might be going on. If you spotted any other Easter eggs or references in the episode that I didn't talk about in the video, just write them below in the comments. My full episode 5 video will post next week just like normal. My House of the Dragon episode 4 video will post this weekend. There's a bunch of series that I'm doing episode videos for right now, and we have all the Marvel Disney Plus Day trailers that'll be coming this weekend. So whatever it is they drop, big announcements, trailers, I'll do videos for all that stuff. So make sure you have alerts enabled for my channel. Probably gonna get a bunch of Fantastic Four news as well too. Everyone click here for my House of the Dragon episode 4 trailer video, and click here for my full House of the Dragon episode 3 video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Hello everyone, my name is Ira Faye, and it has been quite some time since I recorded a video. Things have been busy with work, but I am happy to be able to share this game with you. This is a game that I played a couple weeks ago, and I am playing as Shadow. My opponent is free, and we've given free 2 action tokens, which I feel like balances the game a bit better. So one of them is a muster action that you can use for the political track, and the other is draw a card. So let's get started. I think that I allocated 1 eye, and then I got this great roll, which is just beautiful. Plenty of musters. I drew cards that are fine. I'm happy with Many Kings because it lets me muster the Southrons early and get a good force there. Also, Great Host is a great combat effect. And Wormtongue, I don't usually play because activating Rohan isn't that big of a deal because they still need 3 musters, but it is, you know, an option, and should be easy to cycle with the Witch King later if I want to. So I've been thinking more about the importance of turn 1 of the game, and sometimes the actions are quite obvious. You don't have a lot of choices, but with a rule like this, the free people really have quite a few options. And so, looking at this draw, King Brand's Men, 1 Will of the West, what would you do? This is a really tricky situation just from the very beginning. We can see that it's I would think quite likely that the Shadow will use 1 muster to bring Isengard to war, 1 muster to bring out Saruman. That feels pretty straightforward, but then they have 3 more dice, and clearly free people almost certainly will use 1 action with this Will of the West to move once. But then what do you do with these 3 musters? And also remember, you have a free muster with the action die. With the action token. So this is actually four musters. You can get the elves to war, and on top of that, get an extra elven elite in somewhere. Or you could get North quite close to war, or you could use these army musters to get these units from Edoras into Westamnet, and maybe Iron Hills into Erebor. So there are a bunch of choices. Think now what you would do as free. They started off by passing, which I think is smart if you're not really sure where Shadow's going to attack yet. And then as Shadow, I mustered Isengard, and then free people moved. They were safe. That pretty makes sense. And then I got Saruman. You need to be a little careful about getting Saruman in the middle of turn 1. The free people still have a Will of the West in movement, so that potentially if Gandalf dies, they can get Gandalf on 1. But there's no chance of that happening here, so it's safe to get Saruman right now. Okay, and now to me, this is where sort of the real actions. We took our sort of game actions, and now what are we going to do with these last 3 dice? I'm not sure what I would do here as free. I think playing King's Brandmen, it's usually good to cycle. If you cycle into a Scouts, then you can get a Northern regular into Old Forest Road. I feel like it's a pretty good start. So I think I'd probably do that. The one thing that it precludes is that then I'm not going to be able to get the elves to war that quickly if Shadow comes in. And so, yeah. And maybe that, possibly that would have been an option as Shadow. Instead of getting Isengard to war, I could have gotten Sauron to war and then moved very quickly to bring the elves to war also. But with all these musters, I'd rather not. As a Shadow, at least, I'd rather let the free people have to spend their musters getting their factions to war, as opposed to just mustering them to war myself by attacking. Okay, so King's Brandmen, King Brand's Men. I think that makes sense. And then draw a card. It's Círdan's ships. Obviously, that's nice to see, and it's going to encourage me to, as free people, to get the elves to war. And as Shadow, I always want to get Sauron and Saruman to war, or Isengard to war as soon as possible. Particularly in the base game. In Lords of Middle Earth, maybe there's a little bit of a tension there, but for this, it's totally fine. And with these 2 army movements, I'm now thinking, you know what, I can go north, and so to be able to go north, I need Sauron to be at war. So muster them to war. Okay. Free people get the elves 1 towards war. I think that makes sense. I use my army movement to get people get this army from Dol Guldur into Eastern Mirkwood, and I get my Southron and Easterling armies moving with the anticipation of either coming to West Horondor or Umbar, but I know that I have a muster for them to put 2 units there, and then two units in near Harad, and then 2 units in South Rune, and then 2 units in North Rune. So that will be very nice with many kings. Okay, and then seeing this attack coming north, free people musters the elves once again. And reasonably happy with that as Shadow. They're going to get to have one more muster before I arrive, but I can probably still take out a 1 regular 2 elite force, particularly if I bring in my reinforcements from the Southrons and Easterlings. So I don't know, maybe it would make more sense to have 2 units or even 1 unit from Dale into Old Forest Road just to slow down this army movement. It costs me an army movement and it gives a muster to the north. Maybe something to think about. And then there's still some slight chance I wouldn't manage to defeat it. Okay, so I am happy in Shadow to move into Old Forest Road, and at this point I move my units to Gorgoroth from Barad-dûr just to get that ready too. It seems like I can make a decent attack against Gondor. I can make a decent attack up north. Easily getting 3 victory points, maybe even getting 5 victory points up north. We'll see how it goes. Okay, and now we confirm that for the action token rules, which I have actually previously been playing wrong, you can use an action token even if you don't have any dice left. So the round only ends when both players pass in a row. So, but my opponent, we do a little take back just to confirm, but then we're like, yeah, you can do it even without. And then they decide, I don't remember if they do or don't. I think they do. Yeah, so they go ahead and get the elves all the way to war, which that's going to let me get the Lich King crown, but it also lets them muster an elite into Woodland when an army comes in. So I think that's a great use of an action token, and that's just a great example of how the action tokens help balance the game. It's just a little bit stronger defense for Shadow. I mean, for the free people. Maybe they're still going to hold Woodland Realm. Maybe I'm still going to take it, but at least it's just a little more balanced. Okay, so we go to next round. I'm up to 8 dice. I roll 1 and then I roll a whole bunch of monsters, which is great to see early game. This is a very good roll for me. And my opponent gets a balanced roll, but no Will of the West. So he's not going to get Gandalf this round, even if Gandalf manages to perish. Okay, so first action, clearly going to muster into Woodland Realm, and then clearly I'm going to put Woodland Realm under siege so he can't muster in there anymore. Okay, in terms of cards drawn, I did get Day Without Dawn, and that's particularly nice in combination with these musters because it means that I can have this card active. I need to have all Shadow Nations at war to be able to play this card, and since Gandalf is still in the Fellowship, there's a chance that maybe next turn he'll get a character die and a Will of the West, and he might lose Gandalf early in the turn while he still has a Will of the West, thinking he's going to get to bring Gandalf the White in, and I'll be able to get rid of it with Day Without Dawn. So this is a great card to get early in combination with the musters to bring the South to war. Another great card is this. I drew Palantir of Orthanc. This is going to work out really well because he doesn't have any Will of the West right now, and on top of that, he is going to feel some pressure to use a Will of the West to get Gandalf if he loses Gandalf, and presumably he's going to try and lose Gandalf pretty soon. So he has a lot of pressure on his Wills of the West right now, and I'm likely to get a ring from the Palantir. So I'm happy to trade a die of mine in exchange for a die and for him. That's a great. Okay, so I guess we're talking about strategy a little bit. He passes, they pass, and I bring the Southrons and Easterlings to war. They pass again, and then I bring in the Witch King because I want to start to attack Woodland Realm. I do think maybe I want to wait one more die. If I'm not prepared to attack next action, then it's nice to delay this because it does turn on a single card, which is the Red Arrow. So the Red Arrow is only playable if Gondor is active, and when I bring in the Witch King, it activates Gondor. So if I'm ready to attack next action, great, good to bring in Witch King. If I'm not ready to attack next action, maybe better to wait on it. Okay, I think at the moment I brought him in, maybe it was a very minor mistake. Obviously, it's moot if he doesn't have Red Arrow, but, you know, something to think about. He has drawn 3 strategy cards. Okay, he goes ahead, or they, sorry, go ahead and move, and I miss. That's reasonable. I'm only going to die, and I play Many Kings to the Service of Mordor. So I think this is an example of I just should have reversed the order. There's no reason why I should have brought him in there. If I know that I'm going to play Many Kings, and it's obvious he was going to move. It's not like there were any major surprises there. Just play Many Kings. I don't know. Maybe by delaying Many Kings, I'm hiding some information from my opponent, but I'd rather disable the use of Red Arrow, particularly at this moment where they have 2 units in Edoras. It would be great to be able to play Red Arrow, get a good muster for Rohan, get some leader and elite here, and then with an army movement next round be able to bring it. I will say one other thing. At the beginning of this round, I had a whole bunch of musters, and I could have considered mustering a bunch in Orthanc and then crashing into Helm's Deep, and that was a real possibility. The reason why I went for getting the Southrons and Easterlings to war is that I wanted to try and deal with the North while I'm doing battle up here, and I had Day Without Dawn. So I knew that this was going to be, and Many Kings to the Service of Mordor, so I knew that there were going to be some real benefits of getting the Southrons and Easterlings to war, and that's why I took that route. If I didn't have those cards, then maybe I would have prioritized getting into Helm's Deep early. That is a possibility, particularly if Gandalf hasn't showed up. My opponent might not even be able to kill off Gandalf the Grey, might not be able to get Gandalf the White, so I could be safe from that. Okay, but I go ahead and play Many Kings. I think this is a good route. And now this army is completely full and near Harad, and this South Rune plus North Rune is a nice stack of 10. So if you get Many Kings to the Service of Mordor, you can put 2 in the south and get a full stack, and then you can also put 2 in North Rune and South Rune and get a full stack that way. And that, by the way, is round 1 when I had a half army movement. I moved from Barad-dûr into Gorgoroth instead of getting the South Rune army movement, because I knew I had already drawn Many Kings to the Service of Mordor at that time. I knew I wanted to put 2 here, 2 in South Rune and 2 in North Rune to make 10. And if I had already moved these units to East Rune, then I would have just had not a great place for 2 extra units. So that's why I did all that. And the game, these decisions can really matter even just from turn 1, an extra half movement on turn 1. Okay, so I play my card, and Fellowship moves again. This time I hit them on a 5. Still, you know, kind of good luck for me. And I draw 1. Obviously a pleasant smile. That was the 3rd movement, so it would have been revealed into Moria if I got a reveal, but odds of getting revealed there with only a single die on a 5 were quite low. So I think this is a fair outcome. And then my opponent decides, should I lose Gandalf here? Should I just take a corruption? What should I do? Now, with these cards in hand, with how fast the Fellowship is moving, given that corruption seems relatively low, and my opponent is, at least, you know, Shadow is moving relatively fast militarily, I would be inclined here to lose Gandalf, I think. What would you do? Think about that for a second. Would you lose Gandalf here to a 1? Obviously, less corruption that you want. You don't have a Will of the West right here. So my opponent chose to lose Gandalf, and I think that's a great choice. It gives you Strider as guide, so you're going to be able to move more quickly with the Fellowship. It gives you a good chance of getting a Will of the West next round and getting your 5th die from Gandalf the White. And most importantly, because I see that my opponent has all 3 Nations at War, if they have Day Without Dawn, then they could play Day Without Dawn to cancel my Will of the West, unless I take the first action with the Will of the West. So I think and it so happened I did actually have Day Without Dawn. And so if my opponent was hoping to move again next round, lose Gandalf to a bigger value, and then bring him back with Gandalf the White in the same round, that just would not work because I have Day Without Dawn. So I think this is a great choice, and the Day Without Dawn, all three Shadow Nations being in war, that really tips it over. Okay, so Gandalf dies to a 1, and I get my armies moving into East Rune. This stack is now ready to go. My opponent gets this regular from Iron Hills into Erebor, which I think is great. It makes Erebor much harder to take over, and then makes the key move, getting these units into Westamnet so that they're able to, from Edoras to Westamnet, so they'll be able to move into Helm's Deep. And my opponent does have scouts, so if I tried to attack into Fords of Isen, they can retreat into Helm's Deep and then do an army movement into Helm's Deep and Westamnet on the next action. Or if they're hard pressed and they don't have an army action and they only have extra character dice, let's say they happen to roll a whole bunch of character dice, then you can use scouts to retreat from Fords of Isen into Westamnet, and now that army in Westamnet has a leader from the Fords of Isen, then you can use a character action to move the army from Westamnet into Helm's Deep. So either way, with scouts and this army in Westamnet, my opponent now is, has very good chances of getting a full defense of Helm's Deep. I don't know that they have scouts yet, but they've started to draw cards. If I get Swarm of Bats, I might save it for an attack on Fords of Isen. Okay, so I go ahead and play Palantir as the last action because it means my opponent is going to have a lot of pressure next round with their Will of the West. If they don't roll any Will of the West, obviously they'll be sad to not get Gandalf. If they roll one Will of the West, they're going to have a tough choice between getting Gandalf right away or clearing my Palantir. Probably they'll just get Gandalf right away for fear of Day Without Dawn, and then I'm going to get to use my first action to play a card. So this is just a good situation for me. Okay, so my opponent draws Riders of Theoden. Obviously, slightly late. Would be better to get before they move, but still good to see it. And Riders of Theoden is good. Obviously, slightly late on Wizard Staff, but if you roll a Will of the West right now, you're probably going to be pretty happy that Gandalf is not in the Fellowship because you'll get your 5th die. All right, I draw Dreadful Spells and Return of the Witch King. Swarm of Bats. This is a useful combat effect to go into Forts of Isen if I want to. And my opponent, I allocate 1 eye and another good roll. 1 Palantir for use with the Palantir of Orthanc. Okay. And my opponent does but no character movement. So this often happens
You're all part of the great
on a turn
machine
when you know your opponent is about to bring in Gandalf. That's particularly a turn where you don't want to allocate many eyes because they're probably going to be using at least one of their dice if they roll a Will of the West, not to move, but to get Gandalf. So I'm happy to have a low number of eyes rolled. And even more musters here. I'm fine. I'm thinking about mustering up Orthanc at this point. Could be good. Okay, so
A wizard is never late, nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.
But this is exactly the scenario we were talking about with having lost Gandalf to the 1. This is exactly why you do it. And it paid off well for my opponent. So that was a great play by them. Okay, and I played Dreadful Spells here. Obviously, this is really sad. This is only 2 Nazgul against Woodland Realm, but I really wanted to play a card because I had Palantir of Orthanc, and I get a free card draw out of it. So maybe it's a mistake. This is 2/3 of a hit. Might inflict 1 damage. Maybe it's just a waste. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it would have been better to attack into Woodland Realm once, cycle a card with Wormtongue, and then see what I draw. But then my opponent would be able to get rid of the Palantir that way. I don't know. Maybe this is a mistake. It's not entirely clear to me. But okay, so I attack Woodland Realm with Dreadful Spells. I don't get any hits, which is reasonable. And then I draw Rage of Dunling. So I just changed a character card into a strategy card, which I can do with Palantir of Orthanc. And I did that because I wanted to, I think, I have so many musters here. I wanted to get potentially usable mustering cards, and there tend to be more powerful, a little more powerful combat effects with the strategy cards. And I also thought, you know, I'm probably going to need some reinforcements, either the one that lets me put a warg up there, or an orc, or upgrade the orcs into bigger orcs. So I guess those are trolls. Okay, anyway, so I did that, and I don't know, maybe a mistake. My opponent passes, and I think that's a good play here. I don't have any more Palantirs, so there's no risk of me drawing more cards from the Palantir Abortion, so they can wait to give me a ring, even if they're going to get rid of it this time. Okay, I go ahead and muster more Nazgul. I know that I want to get more Nazgul leadership into this battle, and I know that I want to at least, you know, be able to hunt the Fellowship a little bit as they get past Moria, just to start to slow them down, harass them a little bit. Another consideration might have been to just muster up Orthanc. Maybe I should have done that. I don't know. I get even more Nazgul, and then my opponent passes again here, and I move armies. What am I doing? Okay, so I move into, I threaten Erebor, and I get this army ready to go. I'm not exactly sure why I did that. Upon reflection, I don't know. Why aren't I just using a character die to move Nazgul? I think what I was thinking was, this army isn't that big. I better get my reinforcements closer so that if I do make an attack here, this army is ready to reinforce the Witch King, because I don't want the Witch King to get routed if if they do me or something like that. I don't want to mess with that. So I don't know. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's right. Okay, my opponent musters Gondor 1 towards war. That seems fine. I guess there was some partial threat of getting into Dol Amroth too quickly. I'm not exactly sure everything I was thinking there. And then I attack Erebor. Why did I put Erebor under siege here? Am I switching to Erebor? I guess my plan is put Erebor under siege. Then once Erebor and Woodland Realm is under siege, then I can attack into Dale, and these extra units won't have anywhere useful to go. Because if I attack Dale right away, they'll probably be able to retreat. I guess that's what my thinking is. Seems okay. Not sure why I do that here as opposed to figuring out what I'm doing with this extra muster. Okay, I attack into Erebor. My opponent plays Riders of Theoden. I think that's a great play. And then this army muster, they're going to be able to move them into Western next, so they're really going to be able to defend Helm's Deep. That's great. And then I use the Voice on to get 3 regulars. And I think in that case, you know, often you'll end up upgrading the regulars into elites, which is good. But I have Rage of the Dunlendings, which lets me pull 2 units from north, 2 units from south Dunland, plus get 2 more. And that can make a pretty powerful attack. I can sneak attack into Lorien, I can sneak attack into Rivendell pretty easily. I'm definitely thinking about Rivendell here, just because the Fellowship is still there. So I could potentially get into Rivendell pretty quickly if my opponent doesn't roll a bunch of musters. Okay, they use an army movement to get Theoden into Weston now, which I think is great. And then they pull their regular back and a leader back from Helm's Deep, from Forts of Isen into Helm's Deep. Which I like, actually, because if I had Swarm of Bats, which I do, then I could potentially eliminate an extra leader from Forts of Isen. So this way, they're going to be able to get a full contingent, 2 leadership, 2 elites, 3 regulars into Helm's Deep, plus still have this regular guarding Forts of Isen. This is a great defense of Helm's Deep. I might still be able to take it, but my opponent is investing a lot of dice in it. Okay, I feel like, in terms of Shadow, the Fellowship's moving slowly enough. I should, particularly if I get a few extra musters or I get some powerful combat cards, I should be able to take out the north relatively easily. You know, maybe not super easily. These regulars in Dale could cause some trouble, but I should be able to make some progress in the north. and then maybe Gondor, and then maybe a sneak attack at Rivendell. That's sort of where I'm thinking in terms of points. Maybe three points down here in Gondor, maybe 3 or 5 points up here in the north, and then maybe 2 from an Elven Stronghold, or maybe I come down and go for Helm's Deep if I get. Rage of the Dunlendings gives me a lot of flexibility right now. Okay, so I attack Woodland Realm.